Legal Studies and CRJ Law Enforcement and 911 students. Before you started the class that you're in now, whatever class or classes you have with me this semester, you had to go and listen to and participate in a orientation to the class and orientation to the programs. At that time, I shared some of the history and some of the intent in the design of courses and my goal and our goals in these programs to get you to where you say you want to go. So we're wrapping up week 13 as I record this. And I wanted to do a little review of where we said we're going to go and where we've tried to go. And then I want to get an assessment from you of where you think you ended up. I've attached a document to Canvas. That document talks about Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is a framework that teachers use as a way to guide students through the cognitive learning process. The cognitive learning process starts with remembering. It moves on from remembering to understanding. It moves on from understanding to applying. And then the top three levels of the taxonomy are creating, evaluating, and analyzing. Now, we spend in the law most of our time in that evaluating and analyzing area, those two areas. But you have to start with remembering, understanding, and applying. And we do a lot of applying. Ideally, for law and justice courses and for students, our goal is to develop your ability to function in those top three levels: creating, evaluating, and analyzing. Now, we know that in the law, creating, doesn't come up a whole lot unless we're dealing with a new set of facts or a new law or a new set of issues within the law. A lot of it is repetitive. We spend a significant amount of time in evaluating, making critical examinations and judgments to test, defend, or criticize, or to just analyze and categorize where a particular occurrence, set of facts, falls within the elements of the law or the expectations of the law. Some of you can attest that you struggled a little bit with our approach, and most of our education, especially pre-college, comes to us from teaching and learning activities in those remembering, understanding, and applying spheres of the hierarchy. If you take a minute to reflect, look back at your past education, maybe some courses you're taking currently, many of those classes require you to read, listen to lectures, and then memorize material or concepts, and then later you might spit those bits of information back after you've memorized them on a quiz or exam, maybe an exam every 4 weeks, something like that. Still have courses that are set up this way. That's not necessarily the level of critical thinking that the law and justice systems require of you in the positions you're seeking to earn and keep. It's typically, a little lower level of learning. Now, you still have to go through those processes, as I said, remembering, understanding, and learning to apply. And all of your law and justice courses help you to travel through those first three levels of Bloom's taxonomy. You do the work that helps you remember, understand, and apply knowledge and skill in the law. And you will retain that knowledge and build those skills well into your career. It's something you're going to do and you're going to keep sharp and practice. It's a necessity to your future, to the success of your future, to your ability to do whatever job you're going to do in law and justice. the same time, our course design is intended to push you towards that analyzing, evaluating, and creating level. And those three areas represent the type of work you'll actually do and the things you'll be expected to do as you earn, keep, and enjoy a productive and prosperous law and justice career. I mentioned before the semester began that several years ago I began flipping my courses to a format that required students to read textbooks and course materials. Prior to that, and in many courses, other courses today, you can avoid the prep work of reading the textbook before class. I mean, I can tell you that for those of you in my criminal law class, I used to teach that class at 8 a.m. in the classroom a long time ago, and we'd have a textbook. And I recall a couple occasions where I'd have somebody I was pretty sure hadn't read the book, and I asked them to pull the book out of their book bag, and the book wasn't even unwrapped. It was still in cellophane. This is halfway through the semester. It was possible, and I know I did that too, right? You didn't have to do the prep work in some of those courses based on the design. You could sponge enough information out of the lecture to get by or to pass quizzes or exams and sometimes do very well. And that's a practice that many of you got into in your prior education before college and to some degree in college courses. In our law and justice course format, you're expected to put effort towards knowing the elements of the law and understanding how the law is applied to various fact scenarios. It's not for the purposes of the class. It's not for the purposes of earning the grade. It's for the purposes of preparing you to do the things you're actually going to do on the job. Those are things you're going to be expected to do on the job in real life. So the assignments overall in these courses push you to develop confidence in your abilities at the higher level of Bloom's taxonomy. The result of your hard work is the development of skills and abilities that employers want of any employee in any career field, but especially of people working in law and justice careers. Now, initially, as I said, it can be a shock. And it was a shock, I think, for some of you, and you know who you are. And some of you, we may have discussed that. But I assured you at the beginning of the semester, and veteran law and justice students will tell you after the 12th week, and anybody who's in this class still now, after the 12th week and approaching the 14th week, you know that with effort, consistency, and discipline, you've grown, you've adapted, you've become skilled and confident. If you've done the work, if you've honestly, intentionally, with ownership, put in the work, you know you've grown in your skills and your confidence in the law. And you'll never regret that time and effort. And as I told you at the beginning of the semester, our graduates return often to tell us how well this approach served them towards getting and then advancing in their successful careers. And we can point to any number of people in every level of the law, from the courthouse to the jailhouse to every police station in the region and every dispatch center in the region, who have done exactly this. Now, it's a mindset shift. It's an ownership approach. The opportunity to choose your thoughts and the direction of your career in law and justice, that's on you. And at this stage, you've done that. You will appreciate your time and effort to meet the expectations of each course for many years to come. It will pay dividends as much as a good attitude and the willingness to work will pay dividends in your career. I appreciate your willingness to trust the process and to put in the work this semester. I really appreciate the fact that you listened to what I said in the orientation to this course and our programs, and then you stuck with it. You stuck with the process. You put in the time. You put in the effort. And you took ownership. It will serve you well. So here's what I need you to do for me. This is an assessment, and I need you to complete this assessment. There's 2 questions, and it's fairly simple, but I'd like you to spend some time thinking about these questions and to respond honestly, to share your information honestly for all of us to see. And then I'd like you to, keep this somewhere and go back to it. I highly recommend, and if you're in the internship, you'll hear me say this, either of the internships, the CRJ or the legal studies. From time to time, it's always good to go back, to look at your career, to look at what you've accomplished over the past 6 months, the past year, to update your resume, to reflect where your skill sets are, to reflect whether you need to sharpen some of those skill sets. Little things that may coincide with things we've talked about. Legal studies, if you haven't done any research in a while, you might want to just go and practice research because that's a skill that you have to be sharp with. If you haven't been to the range in a while, and you haven't used your weapon in a while, you haven't cleaned your weapon, you haven't taken your weapon out, you might want to do that, right? On a regular basis for the CRJ and law enforcement oriented people. It's as important to do that as it is to keep in mind your physical and mental health, your rest, your nutrition, keeping yourself sharp. And that's one of the things we do. So it's your initial assessment towards your career. It's something I would suggest you do often in your lifetime and in your career. So here's the first question. Question number 1, and it's a yes or no. Do you feel more confident in your ability to find, read, and apply the law through the stages of Bloom's taxonomy, but especially at those top 3 levels, the creating, evaluating, and analyzing levels? And that's yes or no. If you answer no, you don't have anything else to do. If you answered yes, here's the second question. So if you answered yes, how do you think the ability to do these things, to remember, understand, apply, create, evaluate, and analyze especially, will serve you in the career path you intend to pursue at this time? And I'd ask you to be specific. The reason I emphasize this time, I've shared a little bit about my journey. I started off with a degree in police science and in a path towards a career in law enforcement. I kept going and got a degree in criminal justice. I never really anticipated or saw myself going to law school, but I did. I didn't think that my career would gravitate towards, even with the law degree, the practice of law. My intention was to, at the time, the FBI favored people who had law enforcement backgrounds and a law degree, and that's where I thought I would go. I had a bunch of other opportunities, and I made choices and I took them, and I had a successful private practice of law. I enjoyed teaching, and I ended up here, replacing my mentor, a police officer who went to law school, who I just idolized, really. The guy who started all these programs. And I've been here since, teaching and mentoring and helping people get to the career and get through the career. This stage, I'm so old that a lot of those people have retired or are ready to retire. And I still get jazzed up, wake up every day, energized to come and do this because it's important work. And you guys are all going to go out and do important things in your careers. My point there is that not only me, but I could list hundreds of examples of people, former students, who started out in one area of the law and justice system and gravitated to other areas. I have a former student who started out as a dispatcher, then ended up as a paralegal, had the dispatch certificate, got the paralegal, or actually a criminal justice degree and a paralegal certificate, finished her bachelor's degree, went to law school, is now a lawyer in Peoria. I mean, that's pretty much the whole spectrum of our programs. Lots of people that started out in probation or corrections. I have one of my former students and ICC basketball players that started out at the JDC and thought that's where he wanted to be. And if you would have asked him 5 years into his career, he said that's where he's going to stay. But he's been a police officer for close to 20 years since, and doing very well. There's all sorts of those people. There are people that have moved back and forth in the system to different roles in the system. And they're all needed. So that's why I say, as I did, at this time. But it's also important to reflect and go back. And I always suggest that you go back and look at where you thought you'd be or where you thought you would go. And the last thing I'll say is, whatever you think you want to do at this point, and wherever you end up 20 years later, if law and justice is your thing, if this is where you want to serve, if this is the area, the lane, the place where you want to be, you'll never regret any of those experiences, so long as you go into those opportunities with intention to serve to the best of your ability, being prepared always, giving your best, and not worrying really about compensation, or anything else. Just to know that you want to serve other people, you want to serve the law and justice system, and you want to do your best. And the rest of it all take care of itself. Knock out this assessment, and I hope you use it as it's intended. I really, really do appreciate, as we're heading towards the end of the semester, all you've given this semester. And I hope that you'll keep your energy up as we wrap up these final weeks. Stay well, and if you need me, you know where to find me.